Recording in progress.
Sure. Did you need a turn? No. Okay.
Good evening. I will now call the Auburn Study Session meeting for Monday, July 28th, 2025 to order. Tonight's study session meeting will be held both in person and virtually. Hannah, can you call roll, please?
Deputy Mayor Rakes.
Here.
Councilmember Ammer.
Here.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Here.
Councilmember Sturgis.
Here.
Councilmember Clinton Taylor.
Here.
Councilmember Tracy Taylor.
Here.
Councilmember Troutman Well.
Here.
Hannah, do we have any agenda modifications this evening?
No, Chair, we do not.
Thank you. We have no announcements or reports on the agenda tonight. I will now turn the meeting over to Councilmember Tracy Taylor, Chair of the Public Works and Community Development Special Focus Area, to chair this portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Tonight, I'm excited to hear a little bit more about our transit, and so I'd like to call up Pierce Transit to give their long-range plan for this evening.
And we'll also have Veronica Bean, who is our transportation planner, come up and introduce you to our guests.
Thank you.
Good evening. As Director Gubb mentioned, I'm Veronica Bean, Transportation Planner, and we have a representative of Pierce Transit here to present on their long-range Destination 2045 plan.
Thanks, Veronica, and thank you for having us. I do want to start by apologizing to our favorite board member who's going to hear this for probably the 5th time now, and hopefully doesn't interject with any corrections as I go through this. We started a little over a year and a half ago on updating our long-range plan in conjunction with all of the comp plan updates that were going on throughout our 13 cities and unincorporated unincorporated county. We have conducted 65 outreach events, which includes 16 meetings at council and at committees. We've also received over 700 responses through our online survey, of which 3/4 are actually reporting themselves as current transit riders, which for us is a pretty big deal. When we look at what that community input gives us, we see that about 75% of folks, when they gave their comments, those comments were categorized into things that really focus around what we expected to hear. Give us more service, give us more frequent service, better connections, and also service that extends and starts earlier in the day. So we don't take that lightly. We expected to see that because we know where the service has been, particularly since COVID. But one of the things that we also heard from people is that they want more financial reality and less aspirational design in the planning work that we did. So we're coming back during what is our second iteration of our long-range plan and trying to get the word out that the first thing that you should expect to see from this plan is that it's grounded in long-range financial forecasts that really look to ensure feasibility and sustainability with the Pierce Transit finances that we have. We're currently at about 470,000 local bus service hours, and through this plan, there is the potential that we could go to 482,000 service hours at our current funding level. And I'll talk a little bit about what we could potentially do at a couple different levels of increased funding. The two main components of this plan, though, really are strengthening connections. And for us, we know that when service gets depressed and gets reduced, that the big problem we see is that connections between routes for people that have to transfer, those go down. And when you can't make transfers that make sense for your trip, typically you just don't ride the bus if you have an option. The other thing is enhancing access. So one of the key features that you'll see through the two additional plans that we're going to present is that we are able to, hopefully, if we get funded differently, we can provide 4 new routes that serve about 107,000 of the 700 or so thousand people that are in our service area. Just a bit of a recap for what Pierce Transit service has looked like in recent history. If we look back at 2009, 10, 11, you can see our service hours were about 640. That was the peak for Pierce Transit service in our 45-year history. At the end of the recession, we had a couple ballot measures fail. We also had cities leave the service area, and our service dipped down pretty considerably, down to 400,000 service hours. And we have been slowly increasing back to where we were in 2019. We were at about 500,000 service hours. And then throughout the pandemic, we were down to, I think, about 460 at our lowest. And we've been inching up primarily based on when we can get staff to not just operate buses, but to maintain buses as well. So I'm here talking about Pierce Transit. I would be remiss if I didn't say, if you know anybody that wants to maintain a bus or learn how to maintain a bus, they should call 253-581-8000. We'd be happy to do that. We also take applications for bus drivers, but the nice thing is that our recruiting push over the last year has gotten us where we need to be with bus drivers. Baseline scenario is where we are today and where we think we can push things at the current level for us, which is 0.6% sales tax. And I should back up just one step to note, Pierce Transit's funded at about, depending on the year, 80 to 85% of our funding comes strictly from sales tax. Other than that, we have 2 other things we can do. We can charge people bus fare, which we do, and we can go after grants, which we do. But typically, you'll see 80 to 85% of all of our funding comes from sales tax. State allows us to go to 0.9% without getting approval from them. We can go potentially up to 1.2%, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But at 0.6%, we're really looking to strengthen what we have right now, potentially adding 10,000 service hours, which for us, we would like to focus on routes that we know are high-performing routes. So Route 1 and Route 3, those stretch from downtown Tacoma, east or south on 2 different corridors. One going to the transit center in Lakewood, down, goes through the mall as well. And then Route 1 is our heaviest route. That's about 15% or so of our entire ridership comes on that one route, and it goes down Pacific Avenue all the way to Spanaway. Another thing to note here is we launched what we call our Stream Community Line service. It's a high-capacity transit service that runs in peak hours. It essentially sits over top of Route 1. And one of the big changes that we'd like to see in our baseline over the next 6 years is that we would like to see those routes combined so that we can make some efficiencies with those 2 routes and provide better service for that area. Scenario A looks at what we could do at a potential 0.9% funding level, where we would be able to increase service about 24%, shores up some long-term financial things that we see in the next 20 years, but also allows us to add frequent trips to our to our highest ridership routes, and also allows us to extend some of the routes that we are doing in providing not just that replacement or the combination of Route 1 and Streamline, but also looking for a combination of a couple routes that are fairly high performing in Tacoma into what would be a new mainline route for us. This is a little inside baseball, but any single digit number route in Pierce Transit means that it is very important because it has the highest ridership. So we currently have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are our highest ridership routes. We'd be looking to add another main line by combining 2 routes, which we've done a couple times in the past. Another big thing here that we hear from the business community is extending hours so that people can get home later. So it's good that we can get you to work. It's also good that we can get you home. And that's something that we've honed in on this 0.9% scenario as well. We see more significant improvements when we look at 1.1% sales tax. For us, this allows us to add those new routes that we talked about before, and you can see the list in front of you. We go through a number of different cities and also look at increasing not just the frequency, but also greater span so that we can get folks to where they need to be. We're really looking to make sure that our main routes, so 1, 2, 3, and 4, that we're getting every 15 minutes during the weekdays and every 20 minutes during the weekends when at all possible. At 1.1%, we think we can get there at a much higher route, much higher frequency, but certainly anything above 0.6% funding is a very long conversation with the community. We wanted to present folks with not just where we see ourselves at current funding levels, but where we could potentially be at 2 different rates in the future. Next steps for this plan, we have been in front of our board, I think 3 times at this point. We're going to be back in August to close public comment and potentially get a vote on this plan. This plan doesn't put anything in place other than our baseline scenario, but this plan does give us potentially something to talk to the community about and have some robust conversations about what the future of local transit looks like in Pierce County. Another thing it does is it provides staff with a path forward as we look at grants and we look at projects that tie into the future of Pierce Transit. So we currently have our online survey and comment period open again. You're welcome to, your staff have certainly been invited, and constituents that you have are more than welcome to come on board and give us feedback. I did ask for comments that we've received so far. I will say that obviously our service here isn't as strong as King County Metro for obvious reasons. Of the 700 comments, we did get 10 specific comments at 497. The most popular comment was, can you run this thing all day? The reality is not really, because it's tied to Sounder, and until Sounder increases frequency, if it ever does, we will likely stick to where we are because we really tie that thing to where the Sounder comes. But that is a good partnership, not just for us and the city, I think also for King County Metro, to make sure that we're bringing people from a fairly remote part of Pierce County up to catch that train. So with that, happy to take any questions you have or take anything back to the office if you have comments as well.
Council, any questions for our guest? Councilmember Baldwin.
Yeah, just feedback, and I'll probably go submit it online as well. But the one thing that I would bring up for your ridership, based on lived experience when I was young and had odd jobs and used transit as my main mode of transportation, is that when I was doing shift work and different swing shifts, the common shifts that I saw in hospitality were a 7 to 3, and then a 3 to 11, and then 11 to 7, right? And so I saw that working fun jobs at a hotel and, 7-Eleven clerk, which was actually kind of fun at the time. But if you're stopping at 10, I think you're missing that whole second shift, essentially. And so I would just call that out when you're looking at your ridership. If you're trying to expand, opportunities to jobs, that second shift is really important. So if you're trying to catch those people and catch those workers and get them to their jobs in the city, around the area, I would try and hit at least, being able to get people to that 7 a.m. start and that, catch their way home after the 11 p.m. So.
Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Council, any more questions for our guest? No? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, Director Gaub, our King County Metro Southlink Connections Project update.
Yes, we'll have them come up and join us, and then Veronica will also introduce our guest for that one.
And now providing an update on King County Metro's Southlink Connections Mobility Project. We have 2 staff members from King County Metro.
Hello, Mayor Backus and members of the City Council. Thanks so much for having us here tonight. My name is Genevieve Jones. I use she, her pronouns. I am Metro's local government relations support. Amanda Pleasant-Brown, our lead, apologizes for not being able to be here. She is sick, as well as our community engagement specialist is also sick. So it is me and Nicole tonight. We are here to present to you about phase 3 of the Southlink Connections project. You may remember earlier this year we were here talking about phase 2 and how we were reaching out to your community. Today we'll do a little bit of overview of what we heard in phase 2, what adjustments we did or did not make, and how we are reaching out to your community in phase 3. And we just wanted to give a shout out to Veronica and members of your Public Works Department. They have been absolutely wonderful in attending the Partner Review Board and in working with us on the Green River College layover. And Mayor Backus, you have probably heard some of this at Skateboard, but Amanda wanted me to give you an extra thank you for participating in the Regional Transit Safety Task Force. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Nicole.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I'm Nicole Aguirre. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a transportation planner at King County Metro and also the project manager for Southlink Connections. Is the slide showing okay on that end? Okay. Just see. Okay. Is that the full screen? Okay, perfect. Okay, so just as a reminder, we have a lot of content on these slides for you to all have for your reference. But for the sake of time, we will be moving through things fairly quickly because we really want to talk specifically about what has changed in Auburn and the routes that serve Auburn. So just to ground you all in our project scope, we are considering changes to 22 routes that are listed here. They're a mix of all-day local routes as well as peak-only routes, the majority of which are currently suspended and are unable to be used. And we have a very large project area with communities in 10 cities and parts of unincorporated King County. Just to ground you all in our mobility priorities, we have 5 that our mobility board and our partner review board, which are our community advisory boards, had helped us really focus on when it comes to changes in our transit system. And these were born from findings from our phase 1 engagement, which is really focused on our needs assessment. So we'll be referencing these throughout the life of the project. In terms of an engagement timeline, we are currently in our phase 3 engagement, which will go through the end of August. As Genevieve mentioned, we were here earlier this year to share the phase 2 concepts, and after taking those out to the public, we took some time to revise those after hearing that feedback, and we're here to share that updated proposal with you all. And then after this phase of engagement closes, we'll take some time to finalize the plan before transmitting it to the King County Council in spring of 2026. And we're all aiming towards a fall 2026 implementation of our plan. This slide has an overview of all the different efforts that we had in our phase 2 engagement. We had really good numbers in our online survey. We worked with CBOs that helped us really reach folks and direct them to where they could provide feedback to us. We were out in community doing presentations, outreach at transit stops. We visited our bases, lots of different events, flyering, email outreach, as well as 3 virtual information sessions. So really tried a lot of different tactics to get the word out and to also receive feedback from the community. This slide has some very specific information about what we did in phase 2, specifically in Auburn. So we sent out multilingual text and email alerts to riders on the routes 181 and 165, which are project routes that serve Auburn. We also have 4 mobility board members that say that they live, work, or travel through Auburn. We posted flyers at multiple locations, did tabling at 5 different community events, did transit outreach at stops at Auburn Transit Center and Green River College. We partnered with Alimentando El Pueblo to do culturally specific outreach, posted rider alerts at bus stops, and of course presented at this venue in February. This slide has some high-level results about what we saw in our phase 2 survey. So overall, I would say that the support for the network was relatively high compared to some of our other mobility projects, with about 70% of people responding either positively or neutrally to the changes. And then over on the right, you'll see some responses about whether folks thought we were meeting those 5 mobility priorities. Again, overall pretty high. There's still some areas for improvement in terms of east-west connections, faster travel time, and greater coverage. So those are findings that we took and applied to our phase 3 network. We also asked about satisfaction by route, and you'll see that this is pretty varied, but overall satisfactions were much higher by route than kind of at the network as a whole. I think this might be an easier question for folks to understand because they think about their own specific route. And the green boxes are around the routes that are relevant to Auburn. And unsurprisingly, the routes 181 and the 164 were some of the most popular routes, and that's because there's increased frequency on those routes that we proposed with 15-minute weekday service. So it's unsurprising to us that those are popular proposals. I will say that the MetroFlex proposals were a little bit on the less popular side. I think diving deeper into the comments that we saw for those responses, there's definitely an educational component to that. MetroFlex is relatively new. The name itself is maybe not all that intuitive, and so that really tells us that we need to go out and do education about this program and how people can use it. So these are all findings that, again, we applied to our Phase 3 network. The highlights of this are that the Phase 3 network uses resources from the removed peak-only routes to enhance all-day, all-week travel with frequent service on 2 east-west connections. That's the 164 and the 181. New weekend service where it currently doesn't exist. Easier to understand service. Trips running earlier, later, and more often on most routes. And I think these stats here are really compelling. 47% more trips on weekdays, 61% more trips on Saturdays, and twice as many trips on Sundays compared to service on the ground today. And of course, working with a cost-neutral budget, we did have to find those resources somewhere. So listed here at the bottom, we have the removed peak-only routes. 9 of those are currently suspended, and 2 of them are routes that are currently in service today, which are the 162 and the 177. And then this map on the right, I think is a really compelling map. We've colored the lines on the map based on the number of improvements that they have, with dark blue being routes with 4 improvements, so that's the highest score, and you can see that there's a lot of that all over the map. Thinking specifically about what changed based on our Phase 2 engagement, what we heard was that there needs to be even more trips throughout the week. So compared to the Phase 2 network, we're adding an additional 77 more trips throughout the week by increasing frequency on 5 routes and having earlier and later trips on 8 routes compared to what we brought out in the winter. We did propose an adjustment to the MetroFlex service. Something that we heard was that the hours that we had proposed 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on weekdays, is that it just didn't start early enough. MetroFlex is something that will connect people to the larger transit network at transit centers, and so that service needs to start even earlier for people to make their commute trips. And so the adjustment is to remove the Saturday service that we had proposed in Phase 2 and use those hours to provide even more service during the weekdays. And I'll share exactly what that span of service looks like when we get to that route sheet. And then in order to fund these improvements, we are proposing the removal of Route 162, which is a peak-only route with duplicative service. So that's kind of the trade-offs that we're working with in the Phase 3 network. For the sake of transparency, we do want to share that there are some things that we've heard in the Phase 2 engagement that we are unable to address at this time. The first being that we heard the desire to retain peak period bus service between the project area and downtown Seattle. But since we're working with a cost-neutral budget, we do have to recognize that difficult trade-offs have to be made. And the resources from the removal of those peak-only routes are used to invest in those 5 community-identified priority needs. And we know that light rail will connect riders to downtown Seattle all day and all week. We also heard the desire for additional increased coverage. The Phase 3 network does increase coverage with those proposed MetroFlex zones, and providing additional increased coverage would require us to either deviate existing routes or create new routes. And with a cost-neutral budget, we just don't have the resources to do that at this time. But this is feedback that we're going to continue to hold on to should resources become available in the future. Now to the more exciting impacts to Auburn. I wanted to talk about each specific route. So the 164, as you all may recall, replaces part of the current Route 165 between the future Kent Des Moines Station, Kent Station, and then over to Green River College. We had proposed 15-minute service on this during Phase 2, and that was a really popular proposal, and so sorry, I think I might see a typo on this. We need to update this route sheet because what we are proposing in the Phase 3 network is actually 15-minute service on the weekends as well. Oh no, it's here correctly. I was just looking at the table wrong. So in Phase 3, we had proposed 30-minute service on weekends, and we heard that we needed even more frequency on this route. It serves a lot of people. It serves really important destinations, and so we wanted to lean into this one even further and provide 15-minute service throughout the day on Saturday and Sunday. For the Route 181, the change between Phase 2 and Phase 3 is taking a closer look at our ridership patterns. We are proposing to maintain today's service levels on Saturday and Sunday. So maintaining 30-minute service, but increasing span to start earlier. The service in Phase 2 is proposed to start at 7 a.m. on the weekends, and we're pushing that to 6 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday for the Phase 3 network, so increasing span there. And then the MetroFlex pilot zone. So there are two that would serve the city of Auburn. The first is serving kind of the South Auburn area. And as I mentioned, we're proposing to no longer propose service on Saturday and instead concentrate those hours on the weekdays, and adding 2 additional hours of service. So in Phase 2, we had proposed 12 hours of service on weekdays, and now we want to go up to 14 to make it a more usable service. And that's consistent with the Federal Way MetroFlex pilot zone as well, which serves part of the Auburn West Hill. So that would have the same service hours as well. Next, I want to talk a little bit about what we have planned for our Phase 3 engagement. Our engagement period opened at the beginning of July, on July 7th, and will be live until the end of August. And we're doing a lot of what we did in our Phase 2 network. So we have a short survey, we have flyers. All of the materials on our website are available in 15 different languages, including English. We're still doing outreach at community meetings, tabling at events, being out there at bus stops and transit centers, posting flyers, a social media campaign and toolkit that we've shared with you all, and working with our community-based organizations, as well as working with our boards, doing city council presentations, the whole kit and caboodle. One thing that I do want to highlight is that we are holding 2 virtual information sessions. So these are opportunities for community members to register for a session and hear us talk about the proposals and ask questions and provide feedback. So we'd really love any help getting the word out about this opportunity to your constituents. And I also want to highlight that our CBO, our community-based organization partnerships, are really important to us. They're a great way for us to provide resources to organizations to help them help us in getting the word out. And we've expanded this for Phase 3. So we've added the African Center for Excellence, as well as the African Youth Dreamers Empowerment Program International to our CBO partnerships, and we'll be working with them through our Phase 3 engagement.
And then as for how you all can get involved, if you so choose, we'd love to have you take the survey and let us know about any local events that you'd like us to attend before August 31st. Please also use the communications toolkit and share that with your constituents so they can take the survey and we can hear from them. Continue to support your staff in participating in the Partner Review Board. And if there are any questions that you have after this presentation, please don't hesitate to reach out to Amanda or myself with our emails included up on the slide. And with that, we are happy to take questions.
Fantastic. Well, first, I have a quick comment. I will commend you guys on your social media presence. It has really been outstanding, and I really recommend for those of you that are involved in transit to attend one of those virtual information sessions. You get so much out of those, and I know how much hard work that you guys put into those, so they're very, very rewarding. The question I have, though, is you had mentioned about the MetroFlex and that there was a little bit of lack of education on that. How are you guys going to continue to bolster that? Like, how are you going to continue to push that out?
Yes, that's something that we run into everywhere that we put out a Metroflex zone. As I said, the name isn't super intuitive. People are like, is it Uber? Like, what is this? And so we have a dedicated team that goes out and does a lot of education prior to launch. So just as we do education about service changes before they happen, there will be a dedicated effort to get the word out about what Metroflex is, how people can use it, and we would love partnership on that as well to really get the word out and be able to share those educational resources.
Fantastic. I guess this would be a good time to plug the Auburn Farmers Market. There's an opportunity there for sure. Council, any questions for our guests from King County Metro? Councilmember Baldwin.
So excited to see, more service, faster service, and extended service throughout the day. For both of the Metroflex pilots, it looks like it says in here that the next evaluation will be in 2 years. Is that right? Is there any plan to begin that before the 2 years commences, or what's the approach for that timeframe?
Yeah, that's a great question. Since these are relatively new services, both in terms of like it's a brand new zone as well as it's kind of a newer mobility mode, we have funding for 2 years, and we really want to give the full 2 years to really have this program be socialized as a service and really get its sea legs out in the community before we evaluate whether it's something that we will continue to fund. But the 2 years is also really tied to the fact that we currently have 2 years of funding identified for this. And it's the same for, we treat all of our Metroflex zones the same way. They're evaluated on like a annual basis, and they have at least 2 years before that first evaluation.
Okay.
Councilmember Baldwin.
And Metroflex is something that I had heard about because I have a friend that lives up in the Skyway area.
Oh.
And so I think it's had a few different names over the years, which can always be a challenge from branding. Have you had any areas where you've done a pilot where it hasn't ultimately proven successful, where it's been withdrawn?
I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
We have we've just completed another round of evaluations, I believe, and some of them have been continued as permanent. There is one area that is struggling to meet evaluation. We've been working closely with those jurisdictions to see if there was any engagement that they could do on their part to boost ridership. But overall, we've found that the areas that we choose very carefully end up passing evaluation.
Thank you. My friend raves about it, and so I've been waiting for it to make its way to Auburn.
It's very exciting. It's a very exciting new thing.
Council, any more questions for our guests? Councilmember Ammer.
I will just Google it. I find that there is app for it.
Yes.
That's okay. I will try it. I have to give comment. I will try it because I was one of the rider 181 15 years ago, so I'm more familiar with it. I'm more familiar with the one from Auburn to Enumclaw. So we will. I think council we need to have a try it to go further
Field
away.
trip?
Yeah, I'll try it. Then I will fill the survey. Thank you.
Mayor.
3 at a time.
The mayor said only 3 at a time. We will do it.
Only 3 at a time,
Yes.
not 4 of you.
Or maybe 4 and we announce as a public.
Yeah. No, but we appreciate you wanting to use the services. I think, as ambassadors to your community, that often the best way for people to want to take transit is to see leaders in their community and people they know taking transit. So we hope that once it launches that you do try it out and let us know how it goes.
So much easier than sitting in traffic, for sure. Any more questions, Council?
One last one. Sorry.
Councilmember Baldwin.
For the routes that are going to be deprecated from the Auburn area, I'm assuming that will also happen in the fall 2026 timeline?
Yes, we're hoping to roll out all of the changes in fall of 2026. With the news that Link might be opening a little bit earlier, we are seeing what we can do at a smaller scale ahead of that. I don't think that will have too many impacts to the routes in Auburn because the connectivity for routes that serve the Federal Way downtown stations already exists as of spring 2025 when we transitioned to the new facility. But we are hoping for the majority of the changes to go into effect in fall 2026.
And with that, Do you have a sense of how many riders are on those currently?
On the routes that serve Auburn?
Yeah.
I don't off the top of my head, but we can definitely follow up with that. The 165 and the 181 are some of the most well-utilized routes in South King County. So the numbers are quite high, but we can get back with specifics.
Fantastic. No more questions? No? Thank you guys for your time and your presentation tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. We're gonna skedaddle up to Tukwila for another presentation, but
Totally understand.
Have fun.
Metroflex.
All right, with that, moving on to our next agenda item is our capital project status report and feature project, Neighborhood Traffic Safety Program. Director Galb.
Yes, we have Matt Larson, our senior project engineer, who's going to come up and give you an overview of our capital project status update. And then Veronica Bean, our transportation planner, will go through our feature project for you tonight, the Neighborhood Traffic Safety Program.
Fantastic. Before we get started, questions at the end, preferably?
Yes, please. Yep.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Council members, Mayor, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to come and present to you all today. So, as introduced, I'm Matt Larson, Senior Project Engineer. With me is Veronica, which she's been up here all night. So, so I'll just go ahead and get going. So the capital projects, this slide shows the current status of all of our capital projects. Currently, we have 40 active capital projects, approximately worth $135.8 million. So keep in mind these numbers. These project values span multiple years. Some projects take a year, some projects can take several years. So they're just keep that in mind when you're looking at these numbers. So of those 40 active projects, we have 22 in design and 8 in construction. And I'll go through some really brief overview of some of the construction projects that we have going on. As a reminder, the CPS report, Capital Project Status Report, is available online. There's a link here. You can also navigate to the Public Works page and then click on the Capital Projects Interactive Map. It'll pop up a map. You can look at the areas that you want to look at. You can click on the projects and get more information on those projects. You can also click on a link on that same page that's the Capital Projects, the CPS report, and it'll print out the report that is in your agenda packet. Okay. All right. So like I said, I'll provide a brief overview of some of the projects that are in construction. So like I said, there's 18 projects in construction. This one, probably are aware of what's going on in downtown. So this is a photo that was taken on top of the stockpile in the vicinity of where the 125 East Main Street building was that we had demolished. Kind of just shows the the amount of work that goes into some of these capital projects. And I will do an update on this downtown project. We'll save that one towards the end. So. All right. So first one I wanted to highlight, so CP 2328, this is A Street Southeast Preservation. This is 37th Street to southeast to Lakeland Hills Way. This is mostly a pavement preservation project. We did do a handful of curb ramps as well. This project went very quickly, and really all of the paving is complete, the striping is complete. They've adjusted all the utilities back to the new roadway grade, and the only remaining work left is there's some expansion joint seals on the White River Bridge deck that we're going to be replacing. And then once we finish that, this project will be wrapped up. CP 2123, this is our C Street Southwest Preservation Project. The limits on this project are obviously C Street, but it's from Main south to past 15th Street to the old GSA entrance called Colleen Road. This one is a little bit more in-depth than the previous preservation project. This actually has quite a bit of utility work, specifically water main work that needs to be completed. So this one's taking a little bit longer than the last one. The first section of the water main, which is in the vicinity of Main Street, is now complete. They're working on that second section of water main installation near the GSA Park. Familiar with the park over by the M&O facility? They started there and started heading north, installing that water main. They're around 8th Street Southwest now, and they have some water main that go in all the way north to the SR 18 interchange. Once that's complete, then they can finish the curb and gutter work that's on the northbound side. The southbound curb and gutter is installed, but the northbound lanes, we still need to do curb and gutter there, and then we'll be able to pave that project. Something to keep in mind here is the water main work has all been happening at night to help with traffic. We have had daily lane restrictions to do the curb and gutter, which is now complete on that southbound side. So at one point, we had contractor working a day shift and a night shift, 2 different crews. So we've been juggling that a little bit, and but this one's going pretty well, and we're excited to get this thing paved out. CP 2107 is Public Works M&O facility improvements. This is expanding our M&O facility to add a new maintenance area for our small fleet vehicles. I know M&O is very excited to get this one. So currently, obviously the project's under construction. We have poured the new slab. You can see there in the picture is the new foundation slab for the new expansion. All of the underground work is complete. They have some surface flat work to do, sidewalks, etc. The building is currently being fabricated. It's a prefabricated metal building. So it's being fabricated. They will bring it on site in pieces, and then it'll be put together, installed on site. They anticipate delivery of the building materials in September, and then there's obviously a bunch of interior work that needs to be done, and we anticipate this being complete of spring next year. All right, Auburn Way South improvements. So this is Auburn Way South from Hemlock to Poplar. Currently, we are working with third-party utilities to relocate their facilities. There are some utility poles that are in the way of the widening of the roadway, and so the utilities are relocating their overhead infrastructure, and they are also working. The contractor's also working at night on this project, installing water main. And most of the water main is installed. It is currently being tested, and then they'll start connecting it to the existing systems in the coming weeks. And then they are also working on, there's several walls associated with this. You can see one in the picture. It's a noise wall. There's retaining walls, and so they're in the process of continuing that work on this project as well. Our downtown infrastructure improvements project. So, all of the underground utilities for this project are now complete. We have poured all of the curbing, which is a big milestone. If you go walk out there, you can start seeing kind of where the roadway, and they're starting to rebuild the roadway a little bit. Working on the concrete flat work, specifically, you'll see some sidewalks that have been poured. You'll see portions of the B Street Plaza starting to come together. The new planter areas in the B Street Plaza. Contractor is currently grading the roadway, preparing for paving. The current schedule right now is to start some of the paving work as early as the week of August 11th. We are on schedule to open the roadway as planned on August 29th. And something to keep in mind, and we said this, I think, a couple of times on this project in these updates. When the roadway is open, there will be temporary surfaces that are necessary for a couple of reasons. One, the new traffic signal at Auburn Avenue and Main Street is long lead time materials, so it takes a long time to get those materials. So in order to open the roadway, the old signal system is going to operate as it did before until the new poles and the new infrastructure comes in and delivered. We'll install those, swap over all of the electronics, power up that new signal. In the meantime, there are new pole foundations in the ground in the sidewalk, where the sidewalk will be, and there's old ones. And so we can't remove the old until we can't install the final sidewalk until all the old infrastructure is out. So there will be temporary restoration in the corners of Auburn Ave and Main Street. That is, it will be a hard surface. We'll put in asphalt because it is a long period of time, but it won't be the downtown brick until we can actually finish the installation. And then the sidewalk area directly adjacent to the theater and the future park will also be long-term temporary hard surface asphalt, because we don't want to put in sidewalks and then build the theater and have to either match it or rip out some of the old side or the new sidewalk. And so we're just gonna temporarily patch that back with some hard surface asphalt pavement there. So just wanted to make sure that expectation was set so that, when we do open the roadway, there is still some work we have to do. It's gonna look great, but there is some work we have to do. And then I talked briefly about that theater, the frontage of the theater. So if I should at least give an update on where we are at the theater. The theater design is underway. It is on schedule to complete design the end of this year, and then advertise for bids and start construction early next year. Okay, and then I will hand it over.
Thank you. And so our focus tonight, instead of a specific capital project, we're going to focus on a program that we do turns into some capital projects, but this is an overarching program. So we'll be focusing on the Neighborhood Traffic Safety Program, formerly known as the Neighborhood Traffic Calming Program. So as a refresher, some of the objectives of this program is to improve safety for all road users, particularly pedestrians and cyclists. Also to reduce speeds in neighborhoods so that most cars drive at or below the posted speed limit. Discourage cut-through traffic and to encourage drivers to use streets that are designed for higher traffic volumes, like collectors or arterials. Also to educate residents through traffic safety awareness and outreach, and to meet Auburn's equity goals with a proactive approach to ensure all neighborhoods are evaluated and encourage residents to participate in the process. One of the reasons we've done a little shift from just traffic calming program to traffic safety is we want to take a little bit more of a holistic look at the traffic safety in the neighborhoods instead of just focusing on the speeds. And so that might include also looking at the safety, more safety aspects regarding pedestrians and cyclists and things like that. Another reminder on this is we do a proactive area-wide approach. So we want to evaluate complete neighborhoods or areas rather than just one street at a time. One of the benefits of this is it aims to prevent shifting of cut-through and speeding traffic from just to the next street over. So if you put speed cushions on one street, we want to look at the whole neighborhood so we don't shift the speeding just to the next street down. So I'm going to quickly go through our focus areas that we've looked at in the past, starting in 2022. This was our first focus area, so we, and this project is nearing completion. So we installed speed cushions on 30th, 31st, 32nd, and 33rd Streets Southeast between M Street and R Street. We also have installed some new sidewalk on 32nd Street Southeast. There's a new raised crosswalk with RRFB at the intersection of M Street Southeast and 25th Street Southeast. And we also ensured that speed limits were posted throughout this entire neighborhood. So that included some additional signage in this area. For our 23 and 24 focus area, we did a little bit of a bigger area, so that's why it's a combination of 2 years. So as you can see, this area is between 12th Street Southeast and 21st Street Southeast, and between A Street Southeast and Auburn Way South and M Street Southeast. This project, I believe, is all the way complete. And here we installed speed cushions on F Street Southeast, G Street Southeast, H Street Southeast, J Street Southeast, and K Street Southeast. We also installed new neighborhood traffic circles on B Street at the intersections with 13th Street Southeast and 15th Street Southeast. And this is a picture of one of the new traffic circles on this. And also, as with the previous focus area, just ensuring that there are speed limit signs throughout all the streets on the neighborhood to ensure people know what the speed limit is on those streets. 2025, this project is just starting construction as we speak. So we actually have 3 smaller areas that we're focusing on this year. We were looking at areas where we could primarily treat any potential speeding issues with just speed cushions versus other devices like those traffic circles we saw in the previous focus area. That would allow us to have a little bit of a quicker turnover time and also a lower cost, and we were able to focus on these 3 areas. On the left is the first area. It's around Dick Scobie Elementary School. So the blue bars on these maps represent the streets and areas in which we are installing speed cushions. So around Dick Scobie, you can see we are installing speed cushions on 17th and 16th Streets Northeast, just north of the school. Also on K Street Northeast, leading from basically Harvey up to 14th, which is a very popular walking route for students going to the school. We are also installing speed cushions on either side of the curve where 10th Street turns into O Street Northeast. This is one of the aspects in which we're looking at the more holistic safety aspect, where the reason for those speed cushions is to ensure vehicles are going slow enough to have adequate sight distance going around that corner. Also down in that area, you see we are adding 2 new stop signs. And again, that's looking at that more holistic traffic safety approach. And then on 14th Street Northeast, near the intersection with O Street, we are going to be replacing it's currently an all-way stop with 3, it's a T intersection, so 3 stop signs. We will be replacing the east-west stop sign at 14th and O with speed cushions on the approaches for that east-west approaches. So as cars are going slower, the need for the stop sign decreases, and we also previously had some concerns about lack of stop sign compliance at that intersection as well. The second area is just east along Main Street, east of here, so between 6th Street Northeast and Main, and between M and R Streets Northeast. Again, the blue bars represent the streets in which we are installing speed cushions, which includes N, O, and Pike Streets Northeast. The reason why the bar is only partially on O Street Northeast is because there currently are speed cushions on the northern part of O Street. This is actually a case that I was describing that issue of why we're looking more area-wide, is because there were cushions on that north part of O Street right now. Residents were experiencing more speeding on N and Pike Street because the cars were avoiding that part of O Street. So we're putting speed cushions in throughout the rest of that neighborhood to help with that issue. And finally, we are looking at Dogwood Street Southeast, and we'll be installing speed cushions between 19th Place Southeast, just north of that last casino entrance, all the way up to Skyway Lane Southeast. We're stopping at Skyway Lane because there are currently speed cushions north of that as well. And then looking into the future, For 2026, we are going to be looking at I Street Northeast, the whole corridor from Harvey to 45th Street Northeast. So we, as you know, recently we connected I Street all the way up to 277th. So because of that, and also because of recent and upcoming development, as well as the upcoming I-Line Rapid Ride with King County Metro on Auburn Way North, there's going to be a lot of changes with traffic, traffic volumes, and traffic speeds. We also know that there are some gaps in sidewalk and bike facilities along this corridor, which is important to note considering the, especially with the I-Line coming in on Auburn Way North, there can be maybe potentially more pedestrians in this area. And we've also heard concerns from the public in this area, so concerns about vehicle speeds, the posted speed limit. We've heard concerns about cars leaving the roadway, stop sign compliance, and sidewalks or lack thereof. So taking all this into consideration, that went into our decision to look at this area for 2026. So the steps we're going to take with this, and we're just at the beginning steps of this, is we need to collect and analyze data. This includes some speed studies, volume, things like to that effect. We'll begin our project design. We're hoping to have multiple online open houses. We would like to collect public feedback as like almost a pre-design phase to this project to really see what are the concerns people in this area have, what would they like to see, have that feedback, and then also once we have gathered that information, gathered the data, and start formulating our treatments for those concerns, we will take it back to the public to get their feedback on those as well. And then after all that, we'll review the feedback, finalize the project and construction for summer of 2026. So this is also kind of a quick turnaround on this one. So we are getting right on it. So for some potential treatments, our traffic safety toolbox, I'm just going to run through some potential things that we will do we will consider for I Street. This is also not an exhaustive list. There could be potentially other ideas. But we mentioned the traffic circles we did on B Street. That's a pic on the upper right is the picture of B Street. Or potentially we could do a more temporary traffic circle. We do have 3 comprehensive plan projects slated for I Street Northeast. So some of these measures that we may take may be a little bit more temporary as stopgap measures in the meantime before we're able to build those more comprehensive projects. So this picture on the bottom is an example of what a temporary traffic circle may look like. The signage may be a little bit different than what we do now. Also chicanes, those will, what chicanes do is they shift the roadway one way or the other horizontally, and that tends to make drivers slow down as they go. This is just an image of an example. Bulb outs. The picture I have here is from 4th Street Southeast. Bulb outs narrow the roadway where those bulb outs are, which also make drivers go slower. Similarly, mid-block narrowing, it might not be a bulb out at an intersection like we saw on the picture of 4th Street, but it will just like constrict the road, make it a little narrower, make drivers go slower. Medians and enhanced crosswalks with RRFBs. This picture is from Main and F Street. So the median both does a dual function of both narrowing the lane, causing drivers to go slower, but it also provides a middle of the street kind of refuge for pedestrians as they're crossing, helping with pedestrian safety, as well as the enhanced crosswalks like the RRFBs, that's enhancing the pedestrian safety and making sure drivers are aware that the pedestrians are there. Street lighting, just ensuring that it's adequately lit. That's helpful for everyone. Sidewalks, we may do more temporary sidewalks. So this, where the asphalt is on this picture on 124th Avenue Southeast is an example, and Matt also described that with the downtown improvements project of having an asphalt sidewalk is more of a temporary measure until we have better funding to do the permanent curb gutter sidewalk. But that would just be helpful for pedestrian safety and accessibility in this area. And finally, maybe installing some bike facilities such as bike lanes in here. And that wraps up my presentation, and both of us would be happy to take questions at this time.
Council, questions for our guests this evening? Councilmember Baldwin.
For the, for the I Street evaluation, how would that fit into the timeline for the rapid ride eye line that's coming in?
That is a good question. I believe I'm trying to remember the latest update on the rapid ride eye line. I think might be up to 2027
I was
now.
gonna say, I believe it's first quarter of 2027 is what they're projecting today. So if we get our I Street project under construction in 2026, then it'd be lining up fairly well.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there would be steps that would have to be in coordination, depending on changes to some of the to the curbs or the bulb outs or the narrowing.
So the eye line will be going on Auburn Way North, so I don't think we will need any coordination in terms of the infrastructure on eye line with like the construction times and things like that. But we definitely will take into consideration that the fact that the eye line may produce additional pedestrian traffic and other traffic and things like that when taking consideration what we are building on I Street.
Council, any more questions? Deputy Mayor Riggs.
Thanks. I have a question back on the Main Street. So where B Street Plaza, where they're building that out and the sidewalk over the top of it and it narrows there, is that like a traffic calming narrowing?
So you're talking just on the north end of B Street Plaza where it crosses the street?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's gonna be a raised crosswalk,
Oh, okay.
and it will be, narrow, there'll be 2 lanes, lane in
Right,
each direction, yeah.
It just looks narrow and everybody keeps asking about it.
Oh, yeah, it'll be a raised crosswalk and it'll be, wide enough for two lanes of traffic. No parking, obviously, on the
Right,
raised
on either
crosswalk
side.
area, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And do we know about when the B Street Plaza, what's the timeline to finish that?
It's the same timeline.
The same,
Yes. Again, there is some infrastructure that are long lead times, so there is some street light poles that take a long time to get. But the street lights on Main Street we're utilizing the same street lights, so we'll have street lights on Main Street.
Okay.
We have some new poles going in on B Street Plaza.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about the street lights that we're running into along Muckleshoot for the project up there, the street widening.
Yes.
Did we anticipate having trouble with the removal of those to widen the street?
Yes, we coordinate with utility companies regularly, especially for these widening projects. We coordinate with them very early on in design. There are times where situations change where, it may delay their relocations. I'm not entirely sure what is going on with that particular case. I know that we've been actively participating with those utilities for several years, and it's not a surprise to them. So we're continuing to, I see it creeping up behind me.
It sneaks up
So-
there.
Jacob Sweeting, city engineer for the record. So what's going on? So the PSE poles those lights are on, they're all moved back.
Right.
And so now to get rid of the old ones, the wires that are up on the poles have to switch over to the poles or go underground.
Sure.
So there are some utilities underground that we didn't know were there until we got into construction that we're waiting for those to move. So those other lines can either go underground or move to the poles.
Okay.
So like Matt said, yeah, we do a lot of preliminary work.
Sure.
We've been coordinating with Puget Sound Energy and other utilities for at least 2 years. And then when we get out there and dig a hole, we see a bunch of surprises. So it happens.
Thank you, Jacob.
Make sure.
Council questions? Councilmember Amer.
I live northeast Auburn. I'm so excited about that to the I Street and 270. There is a plan. When I review it, everything will be after the street where we will have the new fire station. Is that correct? Because the fire station will be in the 36th Street. The new. Yes, the 30th. Okay.
I'm not sure where the fire station is.
It's in the 30th. So,
Okay.
the street, I can tell you even where the area go. I
Okay.
use it from the day they open it.
Okay.
So I know everything you talk about, and I'm so excited. So I know there will be no caution over there. So
At the fire station on 30th?
in the I Street.
Between I and Auburn Way North.
In
on
270,
30th
yeah.
fire station.
That's my understanding, because that's the reason when they built the fire station, to allow them to use the I Street.
Yeah, and because I Street is an arterial street, there are certain traffic calming measures that we will not consider for it, such as the speed cushions, which we definitely won't be doing that on there because that's
You
not.
boxed me.
Right.
I looked to the area in the M14, you
Yeah.
boxed me. You left me 22nd Street. Oh, did you say this loud? Thank you. No,
But yeah, I
know
know those are often a concern with emergency vehicles, and that we won't be considering that for the I Street because it is an arterial.
I appreciate everything. Just knowing this area, I see the speeding, I know everything. So thank you for thinking, plan it, work on it. Really appreciate from someone as a resident who lives in this neighborhood in the Northeast.
Councilmember Ballin?
Yeah, so the one thing I was gonna ask about with the different options in the traffic safety toolbox for I Street, as you noted, it is an arterial. With the bike facilities, because it tends to have a higher speed posted, right? Would you ever consider looking at like the protected lanes for that?
That is an option. And then also that's just always an option. Yeah.
I bring it up because as I've been, driving throughout Auburn, it seems like there is increased adoption of a lot of e-bikes and e-scooters and things of that nature where, as much as I love a sidewalk, if our pedestrians are beginning to use those a lot more, having some laneage for them to get around in, I think is always beneficial, right?
Yeah, and that's definitely something we should take into consideration as well. Okay. Thank you.
But yeah, I've had feedback on that area, so glad we're exploring it. Thank you.
Council, any more questions? Fantastic. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. All right. Next up is ordinance number 6984. It's an ordinance vacating city right-of-way located within a portion of the northwest corner of First Street Northwest, B Street Northwest within the city of Auburn.
Yes, and
Director Grab?
we have Amber Olds coming up. She is our right-of-way specialist. She's going to give you a staff report on what this vacation is and the considerations that are involved.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor, council members, chair. As Ingrid said, I'm Amber Olds, right-of-way specialist with Public Works Department. Draft ordinance number 6984 is for right-of-way vacation BAC 25-0002 for Central Puget Sound Regional Transit Authority. They're also known as Sound Transit. Sound Transit has submitted a petition and proposed vacation of the right-of-way located at the northwest corner of First Street Northwest and B Street Northwest. Approximate area is 1,040 square feet. It's shown in red on the map on the screen, also on page 88 of 208 in your agenda packet. Sound Transit is developing the adjacent parcel to the north of the to the north end. They're building the parking garage serving out the Auburn Station facility and are proposing to locate improvements associated with their project outside of the building. Most of the proposed right-of-way vacation area originally became right-of-way when the south 32.5 feet was dedicated as right-of-way on November 21st, 1887, with the addition of the first town of Slaughter. And the north 7.5 feet of the proposed vacation area was dedicated as right-of-way on November 18th, 2009, with previous development of the parcel to the north. The proposed vacation area is bordered on the north by Sound Transit's property and their project, and it's bordered on the west by BNSF Railroad property. BNSF supports the vacation as an adjacent property owner, and they have signed the right-of-way vacation petition that was submitted by Sound Transit as part of their application. And it's bordered on the southeast by additional right-of-way. City Public Works staff have reviewed the application along with other city departments, jurisdictions, and utility purveyors that might have an interest in the right-of-way. and determined that the right-of-way is not necessary to meet the needs of the city and could be vacated. Staff does support vacation of the right-of-way with the condition that an easement be reserved for Puget Sound Energy electrical facilities. And then staff also recommends that compensation for the value of the right-of-way not be required, as right-of-way was dedicated as right-of-way by plat or with commercial development at no cost to the city. Public benefit of this vacation includes a decreased maintenance responsibility for the city. And the vacation also supports development and construction of the second Sound Transit parking garage in Auburn, which helps facilitate commute trip reduction by addressing commuter parking needs for the Auburn station. The public hearing is scheduled for the August 18th, 2025 City Council meeting. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council, any questions? I don't think so.
All right.
Thank you. All right. Next up, Director Galb, is the Transportation Impact Fee Program update and ordinance number 6992.
Good evening. So tonight, we're back to talk to you about the traffic impact fees. We started this conversation back in May, and we're going to continue that on. This has been under conversation for several months with the council, probably for about the last 9 months. And so we're going to go through a lot of details tonight, a lot of technical information tonight, similar to what we did when we did the photo enforcement discussion at the last meeting. So I am going to ask that you hold your questions until the end of this presentation so we can get through it all, because I suspect a lot of your questions might get answered as we walk through the technical details. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jacob Sweeting to start us off.
Great.
After we work through these technical details.
There we go. Hi. So let me start off with talking about why are we looking at the traffic impact fee program. The first reason why is because we need to update the program to align with the comprehensive plan that was adopted last year. Specifically to incorporate the multimodal level service standards and some of the new modified projects that are included in the comprehensive plan to address those standards. We also are looking at reviewing and updating the approach towards the downtown area and the expanded downtown area, which is proposed with the downtown plan, which is scheduled to be adopted later this year. And account for new transit services, like the I-Line that's scheduled to be in service in 27, like we talked about. We also are looking at updating the fees, updating the fee approach and the structure. And then finally, we are looking at how we can increase the program transparency, predictability, and flexibility to address some of the concerns that we've heard from the City Council as well as from the public. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time summarizing what we've heard from the City Council in previous meetings. So last year in October, during a study session, there was a discussion with economic development as well as with the fee schedule. And during that discussion, we heard some questions about the traffic impact fee program, and we heard some concerns about the impact fee program and how it might be a challenge for businesses to pay the fees, especially small businesses in Auburn that might be recovering after, say, the COVID pandemic and things like that. There was a discussion in that same meeting about looking about whether or not we could look at the traffic impact fee program and the modeling to make the payment of traffic impact fees more flexible. Could there be something like a payment program to help address that? There was also a question raised about what about businesses that aren't listed in our fee schedule? The fee schedule doesn't list all types of businesses. It doesn't list wineries or breweries, and so how can we address the situation where business isn't listed there and it creates some sort of uncertainty? And then there were also some questions about the complexity of the traffic impact fee program and having to do an independent fee study if your business isn't listed and how that might work. So then the following week at the City Council meeting on October 21st, the citywide fee schedule came for consideration at the City Council meeting. And in that citywide fee schedule, the traffic impact fees were included, and at that time they included an 8% increase from the 2024 fees. So again, there were concerns stated about the rising costs of fees and the impacts on small businesses. Specifically, there was a concern raised about downtown businesses. And at that time, the city council adopted the fee schedule, but held the traffic impact fees at their 2024 rates, with the plan that we would then come back this year in '25 and talk about the program and see how we could update it to address some of these concerns that had been heard. So then this year in '25, we came back to council in May, and we presented our plan of how we're going to be looking at the traffic impact programs and what we were going to be looking at. And at that council study session, we definitely heard that there wasn't an idea that we were going to cancel the traffic impact fee program. There was definitely a recognized need from the council that the programs needed to meet concurrency, provide for infrastructure needed to serve the growth and development, but that there needed to be a balance between having the fees that would provide the infrastructure, but also not be so heavy that it could potentially stifle businesses from coming into Auburn or expanding within Auburn. So then the following month, last month, in June, we came back and we actually talked about a very specific change that had to happen to the traffic impact fees, and that was to address the requirement from the state legislature that the residential housing has a proportionality that's scalable based on square footage. So we talked about that in June, and then on June 16th, the council adopted that change into the 2025 fee schedule. So with that history, I'm going to pass it over to James, and James is going to talk about the process that we've been working through to update the actual fee schedule that will be proposed for 2026.
Okay, so as Jacob mentioned, one of the major goals is to align the traffic impact fee program with the recently adopted comprehensive transportation plan. That plan was based on new land use targets for the city, new growth targets for the city. And what that means is we have new traffic volume forecasts and new travel patterns for the future. As Jacob also mentioned, as a result of that, the plan includes a new list of projects that need to be accomplished to maintain concurrency and accommodate all of that new growth and development that's forecast. And as part of that, the plan also identified a project cost for each of those projects listed, and a total amount that we need to fund all of those projects through the life of the plan, so through 2044. The other big change with the comprehensive transportation plan is that it adopted level of service standards for pedestrians and cyclists. Those are based on a level of traffic stress metric, which identifies the types of facilities that are needed to provide an acceptable level of comfort to those active transportation users. So for pedestrians, it's based on the classification of the street, and for cyclists, it's based on a combination of the posted speed limit, traffic volumes on the roadway, and whether it's a freight corridor or not, as identified in the plan. That was used to identify gaps in the existing bicycle network. So also some of those multimodal improvements that are needed to complete those gaps and build out more of that infrastructure, with the goal of creating a mode shift, so to get people out of their personal vehicles and onto transit and walking and biking to be able to get around instead. So the first part of that is the growth trips. So as I said, this is all based on the modeling that was done for the comprehensive transportation plan. You can see in the chart the growth in households and the growth in jobs that's anticipated to occur over that 20-ish year period. What that equates to is during the PM peak hour, an increase of about 15,000 vehicle trips spread across the city. That's based on the weekday PM peak hour, which is the hour between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. that has the highest traffic volumes and the highest levels of congestion on the street system. And we look at that because to maintain concurrency, that's where we need the additional capacity. So the projects that are identified in the plan are to meet that need during that PM peak hour.
Could you repeat the time, the peak time, please?
Yeah,
Sorry,
sorry.
Councilmember Trout.
I apologize. Repeat the peak time, please.
So the PM peak period is from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And the peak hour is the 1 hour in that 2-hour window with the highest volume. So it could be 4 to 5, it could be 4:30 to 5:30, it could be 5 to 6. It varies from location to location.
Thank you very much.
So based on that growth and all of those additional trips, the plan identified a list of projects. So previously, the traffic impact fee program was based on the needs in the 6-year transportation improvement program. So that short-term plan that we bring to you every year that looks at that next 6-year period and the needs there. We're proposing to update this program to be based on the long-term needs, so all of the projects in the comprehensive transportation plan, so that 20-year window instead. To provide stability, consistency over time. In total, there are 39 projects that are included in the traffic impact fee program. The majority of those are in the comprehensive transportation plan. There are some that are already in the TIP that already have traffic impact fee money programmed in them that we need to keep collecting to be able to fund those projects as well. And I think an important thing to note is the types of projects that traffic impact fees can be used to fund. It has to be projects that add capacity to the street system. We can't use traffic impact fees to pay for preservation of the street system. We can't pay for maintenance. We can't pay for other things. It's all about vehicle capacity and meeting our level of service standards and concurrency during that PM peak. So for those 39 projects that are included in the program, the total project cost for all of those is basically it's $200 million. Now, we can't collect traffic impact fee money and use traffic impact fee money to pay for that whole $200 million project cost. There are only certain things we can collect fees for. So it has to be new trips that are generated by development that's occurring within the city. We can't collect fees for growth that's occurring outside the city and people are driving in or out or through. We also can't use traffic impact fee money to pay for something that's already broken, so an existing deficiency. This is just to build additional capacity to accommodate that growth and development that's happening in Auburn. So looking at the impact of that development versus the whole growth amount, the math worked out that $81 million of that total is attributable, can be collected through the TIF for that development, so that's about $4 million a year. The remaining $118 million, we have to figure out how to fund from other sources, and that would include grants, city funds, loans, other places we can find money. So with that in mind, the current traffic impact fee approach has a single fee that's applied throughout the city. We do have a factor that we apply to development in downtown to account for better access to transit, better bike and pedestrian infrastructure, so some discounts there to account for that. We currently have a separate fee schedule for the Lakeland Hills PUD, which is the area that's shown in pink on the map. The reason for that is that it was something that was developed before the full traffic impact fee program was adopted in 2001 to account for some of the impacts of the Lakeland Hills PUD development. What we're proposing to do with this update is to split things into two different districts. We're going to have a district for downtown and then a district for everywhere else. with different fee schedules, different fee rates for both, and I'll talk about those individually now. So, as Jacob mentioned, the downtown district is going to cover the existing area, which is kind of below the red line on the map, but also the area that is proposed to be expanded into as part of the downtown plan later this year, which is above the red line and extends up to the 10th Street Northeast Corridor, so where Fred Meyer is. The other thing is, rather than having that one fee citywide, we broke downtown out separately. We looked at how many trips were attributed to the growth and development just occurring inside that expanded downtown boundary. And of those 15,000 total trips, that was about 4,200. We then looked at, through the modeling, the specific impact to each of those 39 projects that those 4,200 trips would have. So we're only charging downtown for its own impacts, which are proportionally smaller than development outside of downtown throughout the rest of the city. And of that 81 million total TIF amount that we can collect, the downtown share of that is only $16 million. So instead of 15,000 trips and $81 million for downtown, it's 4,200 trips and $16 million. Then for the rest of the city, so everywhere that's outside of downtown, we have whatever's left. So we have 10,800 trips left of that 15,000, and the remaining portion of that TIF eligible cost, so 65 of the $81 million. What that really means is that when we look at the downtown district, when we divide the total cost over the number of trips, we are proposing a fee per trip of just over $3,800. Compared to our single citywide fee that we currently have in place, it's about a $2,200 or a 36% reduction in that base fee per trip. And then outside of downtown, so we have the bigger number of trips, but also the bigger dollar amount. Spreading that over each trip is just over $6,000 a trip, which is very, very consistent with our current fee per trip that's applied citywide. It's a very, very marginal increase. So that's kind of sets the base fees. Then we apply a number of factors to those fees that you'll see in the fee schedule that can either increase or decrease the fee. And the reason that we do that is to account for specific characteristics of different types of land use category. So I'll move on to that next. So this is a sample of some of the information that's proposed to be provided in the fee schedule. I took bits and pieces and kind of mushed them together a little bit to give you some examples. So this is some typical land uses that we see developed throughout the city. The land use categories and the land use codes and the basic vehicle trip rate are all directly from the ITE trip generation handbook. So those are industry standard categories and industry standard trip rates for those land uses. We then make some adjustments to those to account for things in Auburn. The first is the new trip factor. So the new trip factor, if you have a 1, so general light industrial or single family, it means every trip to and from that land use is a new trip to the street system. For the land uses that you see that have a value of less than 1, it means that a portion of those trips are already traveling on the street system and would be going past that business anyway and are deciding to stop in. So not a new trip, so no new impact from that trip. It's already in existence. We then apply a trip length factor, and that's to account for the distance that a trip makes on our street system relative to the average for all our trips, which is just over 3 miles, to account for how common, how prevalent a land use is. So if you've got something that's really, really common, it's on every street corner, those trip lengths are going to be less. So what that does is reduce the fee. It becomes a factor less than 1, so it's a reduction to account for those shorter trips. Where you have businesses where a lot of trips are coming from outside the city, or there's only, they're very sporadic, we have longer trips. So to account for that longer trip and a bigger impact or an impact to more of those projects, that gets factored up to account for that. And then for land uses in the industrial category, we have a truck adjustment factor. So trucks are big and heavy and slow moving, so they take up more capacity on the street system and at intersections than passenger cars do. So we charge an adjustment factor to account for that, and that increases the fee slightly. We then have a new factor. We have a proximity to transit factor, and again, this is consistent with the adopted comprehensive transportation plan. This replaces the downtown factor that we've been using historically, but then it also expands to other areas that have robust transit service. And we'll talk about that now. So this is the new factor that's being proposed as our proximity to transit factor. So again, this is consistent with what was adopted in the comprehensive transportation plan, and it applies to the areas in the map that are shown in green, which are those that are designated as having a transit level of service 1, which is the highest level of transit service that we have. Frequent transit service that serves these areas is high frequency, so less than 15-minute headways, and closely spaced transit stops, so easy to access for lots of people. The area that it covers is around the Auburn station downtown, where we have sounder service and lots of bus service at the station. And then along the Auburn Way North and I Street corridors, where Rapid Ride is proposed to be added, as you heard, early 2027. The reason for this reduction is because developments along in those areas, people can rely more on transit, so they drive less, so those developments have less impact to the projects, generate less trips. This is also consistent with the policies in the plan, where that growth and development is focused in those areas that have this more robust transit service. So by lowering the traffic impact fees in those areas, it supports the goals of the plan and concentrating that development along those corridors and in and around downtown. Hopefully, over the course of time, this green area will expand as we continue to get more frequent transit routes provided by our transit partners in the city, as you heard in an earlier presentation. I touched on this a little bit before. So the existing Lakeland Hills PUD fee schedule is proposed to be retired. The vast majority of the development that was envisioned in the original PUD approvals has been accomplished. So any further development in this area will have the same impacts to the transportation system as development anywhere outside of this boundary. So it will be equitable with development in the rest of the city. Part of retiring this is a public notification process, which is being coordinated by the community development and legal departments. We also currently have a separate fee schedule for truck-dependent land uses. It's a very small fee right now, and it was intended to collect additional revenue to pay for infrastructure needed to support freight movements. So larger radius at intersections, wider travel lanes, things like that. we don't feel that there's a need to continue to collect those fees because those elements are just included in the engineering design standards. So they're part of projects that we design, we account for that, and development that's building their half street improvements to support those land uses is also taking care of those additional measures. I have some examples to walk you through. The first is just a summary table showing the proposed fees for a single-family detached residence. These assume that each unit is bigger than the 1,717 square foot proportionality limit that was adopted last month. So outside of downtown, in an area that doesn't have frequent transit service, the current fee for a single-family residence is $6,575. That will see that 0.4% increase for those areas to just over $6,600, so about a $30 per unit increase. For locations outside of downtown that are in that level of transit service 1 area, the fee would be reduced by close to 20% to about $5,350, so more than $1,000 per unit reduction. And then for locations within the downtown district, without frequent transit service, the current fee with that downtown reduction is about $5,300. That would further be reduced to about $4,200, so a further 21% reduction. And then a downtown location with frequent transit service, which is the majority of downtown, the reduction would increase to 36% because you're getting the downtown fee, and then the transit reduction on top of that goes down to about $3,400 per unit. And again, that encourages and supports development in downtown and in those areas that have that frequent service, which is where we want that development to be focused. The second example is somewhere in North Auburn. It's non-downtown, so it's paying the citywide fee, but it is in a location that has frequent transit service. This example would propose to build 8 single-family attached dwelling units with an average unit size of 1,000 feet, so kind of a middle housing type development. Because this is less than these would pay the fee per square foot based on the square footage because it's below the threshold that triggers the full fee. So you can see the fee here would be reduced from $3.83 a square foot down to $3.12 a square foot. That reduces the fee by 19% from just over $30,000 to just less than $25,000. The third example is a residential development in downtown. So this is in the downtown district, so it's paying that lower fee to begin with. And it's also getting the reduction for frequent transit service. The proposal here is 267 multifamily mid-rise dwelling units. So this would be something that would be similar to the Verge or maybe Track. The average unit size here is 800 square feet, so this also would pay the fee per square foot. Under the current fee schedule, that would be $2.14 a foot for a total fee of $457,000, which equates to just over $1,700 a unit. With the proposed 2026 fee schedule, the fee per square foot would go down to $1.37, reducing the total fee to $292,000. The fee per unit would equate to just about $1,100, which is a 36% reduction. Keep in mind that those are big numbers, but that's also a very big development project. And then my fourth and final example is another downtown location, so downtown district, so the lower reduced fee schedule, also in a location with frequent transit service. It's getting hard to say that. This would be a coffee shop without a drive-through facility, about 1,250 square feet. The current fee per square foot 2025 is $16.24 a square foot for a total fee of just over $20,000. As proposed, that fee would go down to just over $10 a square foot. The total fee would be just under $13,000, so another 36% reduction for a commercial development in downtown. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Jacob.
Pass it back over?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so I just want to do show a couple more examples very specific to the downtown area and compare some of the downtown fees that we pay would be paid today versus proposed in Auburn versus some of our neighboring cities, with the idea that some of our neighboring cities have seen some success in redevelopment of the downtown area and attracting businesses. So we pulled some comparisons here. We pulled the city of Sumner and the city of Kent's traffic impact fee programs as comparison. So for a restaurant, say a 1,500 square foot restaurant, currently in Sumner for that new restaurant, the traffic impact fees would be $52,000. In Kent, it'd be $29,000, and this is in their downtown areas. And then in Auburn, it'd be $35,000. So currently, we're kind of sitting in between Kent and Sumner. With our proposed 2026 fee schedule, that same restaurant would be paying $21,000 in Auburn, which is very competitive compared to Sumner and Kent, which is below those fees. And for Auburn, that's about equivalent of what we were charging for traffic impact fees in 2016. So it's rewinding the clock in order to try to, help be competitive to our neighboring agencies and attract and keep those businesses that we want to have downtown. Other comparisons: a single-family home, convenience store, and a hotel. The convenience store, Sumner $284,000, Kent $157,000, Auburn $69,000 currently, and that would drop again down to $44,000, which is back down to like 2018, 2019 levels. So overall, this chart, we were kind of wanted to see where we're at comparing to other agencies. It looks like what we're proposing would be competitive to some of our neighbors. We're competitive today. We're somewhere in between, which is where we've also sought to be in the past. But I think with these new rates that are being proposed, this example shows that we can be even more competitive. So we've talked about how the fee schedule is developed. We talked about assessing the actual traffic impact fee, but the actual amount of the traffic impact fee due isn't just about the assessment. It's also about looking about whether or not there's any credits. So a credit can be assessed and reduced from the traffic impact fee assessment amount for a current or previous land use on a property that's being replaced by the new development. So this slide shows the three different examples of the credits for the land use. So there could be a TIF for existing use on the property that's being replaced, and that would be how that existing use would be feed in today's schedule when you're paying the new fee. There would be also the possibility that there is a TIF credit for a previous use going all the way back to 2001. So maybe in 2008 there was another use that had a higher impact to the transportation system. So maybe there was a restaurant instead of what's there today. We would use that restaurant, and we would take that fee that restaurant would pay today, and that would be applied as a credit against what you are being assessed today. So the amount due would be the assessment minus the credit for the amount due. And then the final option would be the total amount of previous traffic impact fees that have been paid. So there are situations where some of the developments have paid traffic impact fees. Maybe some of the shell retail spaces here have already paid some traffic impact fees. That, of course, would be credited against any assessment that would be due for a business coming into those spaces. And between those three different examples, we always we would take the highest amount, the amount that results in the highest credit against those the assessment of the traffic impact fees. And then another form of credit, sometimes, particularly this happens with larger developments, but a larger development might come in, and after they've built their frontage improvements, their half street, their sidewalks right in front of their development, their traffic impact analysis shows that they have an impact to an intersection that's on our traffic impact fee projects. So it's one of those projects that James mentioned, but they get ahead of us. And so that project needs to happen with their development rather than when we were planning on doing it, say 12 years out. So if they go ahead and build that, as they would need to do to be able to open their business, anything that they're building above and beyond what they're actually triggering with their business, so the traffic that they put through that intersection, they would be then get a credit against the traffic impact fee that they're paying. So they get credit for building excess capacity beyond what they're actually putting into that intersection of the project, whatever it may be. So that's how fee schedules develop, that's how the initial assessment happens, that's how the credits happen. Now I want to turn to focusing on what we're going to do to make this more transparent, predictable, and flexible. So the first part of this is transparency. And I want to thank our economic development group. We met with them and run through some of these ideas and heard some input, and we will continue to work with them as we are developing some of these different pieces of this puzzle to help make sure that we are having a program that is as transparent and predictable, flexible as it can be to encourage the economic development that we want to see. We have some information on our webpage for traffic impact fees, but what we're looking at doing, we're developing a more robust and a more informative TIF webpage. It will have a background on what traffic impact fees are. It'll have a map showing all the projects where you can go and look to see what these fees are paying for and why they're needed. You can click on the information about the project and it'll tell you what it is. And then it will talk about the assessment approach. It'll go through some of the information that we have tonight and talk about exactly the steps that involve with actually developing the fee schedule and assessing a fee and the credits associated to get to that final amount due. We looked at an example that Pierce County has that actually is serving as a pretty good means for us to kind of model some of the things that they do on their webpage that is really informative. We have handouts now on the traffic impact fee program, but of course we will update those to include the new program approaches, some of the elements that we're talking about tonight. The fee schedule, the actual published fee schedule that we've had in the past, it doesn't have all of the factors that James talked about because we wanted to simplify it. But in doing that, you can't really see all the different components that go into calculating that fee. So we're going to publish the entire thing. We're going to publish the actual final fee for each one of the land uses, but then also have another table that shows each one of the factors that goes into that so that people can see how it's actually being developed. And if a developer feels that maybe their development doesn't really follow those characteristics of that traffic factors or whatever we're using, there'll be an approach that they can take for that. Which brings me to the last bullet. For businesses that aren't listed on the fee schedule, and there's quite a few. The reason that we don't list every possible type of business on the fee schedule is because the fee schedule only lists land use types that are in the ITE manual and in the ITE manual with a good amount of data. The ITE manual that we talk about all the time has some land uses where it only has one or two studies from the East Coast or places that may not be much like Auburn at all. So we don't include those because we don't feel that we have enough information to say that those actually represent what land use here in Auburn might be. So the wineries or some of the other businesses, breweries, there's businesses that aren't listed on the fee schedule that we definitely have in Auburn and we want in Auburn. We want to encourage more to come to Auburn. So how do they know if they're not on the fee schedule what their fee would be? There'll be a not listed category, and that not listed will have instructions for what they do to figure out what their traffic impact fee would be. And I'll go more into that here on the next slide as far as what that process looks like. Predictability. So what we've heard is sometimes businesses are caught off guard, or someone building a new home is caught off guard. And so we want our fees to be predictable. We want people to know what's coming. We want people to know that, hey, if I'm going to do something a year or two from now, I have a general idea of what that fee might be. One of the areas that we looked at is when the actual traffic impact fees are assessed. What is the trigger? And currently in our code and our fee schedule, the traffic impact fee assessment happens for any type of change of use. So if you're changing a use from one type of use to another, whatever permit you're getting or license that you're getting associated with it, we look at it to see if you're increasing the impacts to the transportation system, and we assess a fee accordingly or not. Often there's no fee. Where that runs into problems is sometimes we have say a business comes in and applies for a business license, they've already done their building permit, or they don't need a building permit, and they apply for a business license, and then they get hit with the traffic impact fee. Total surprise. In looking at the history of our program, the collections for non-building permits have only been about 3% of our total program collections, and it has resulted in some of the more significant concerns that we've heard as far as being predictable. The state legislation, the state law, and many of our neighbors only assess traffic impact fees when an actual building permit is being applied for, and that's what we're proposing to going back to only considering a traffic impact fee if you're applying for a building permit. Not a business license, not another type of permit, but it's a building permit that is the trigger. So that is one of the changes that we are hoping makes this program more predictable without much, if any, impact to the actual collections and the ability to maintain the projects that we need to build. We're working on a TIF fee and credit calculator tool. This would take the approved fee schedule, it puts it into a web-based type app program where we can use it, economic development can use it, an applicant can use it, someone just thinking about doing business in Auburn can do it. They go in there, select where they are on the map, so they can figure out the district that they're in and what factors might apply, and run through the exercise of asking what land use they have, what land use they think might have been on that property to evaluate some of the credits, and it would estimate the impact fee due. Of course, that will require validation. We will review those. So it's a work in process, but we have a vision for that as being something that could help businesses and residents, developers predict what their fee may be. And then James touched on this briefly, but one reason we've seen some variations in how much traffic impact fees are going up year over year. Like last year, it was proposed to go up 8%, or in previous years it might have been 2% or 5%, or some years it's been 15%. Historically, since 2007, the traffic impact fees have gone up approximately 5% per year has been the average. But rather than having it bounce around, by basing the fee on the entire set of projects in the comprehensive plan, rather than just the set of projects that are in the 6-year window in the TIP, we have a more stable and a set project cost value that then all we need to do every year is look at the escalation of the project costs, which, like the system development charges that we use for utilities, we would use the construction cost index to apply to the traffic impact fees. So there's not some complicated math and us deciding which projects we're going to build or not build. It's already been adopted in the comprehensive plan, and we're really just making adjustments based on the anticipated changes in those project costs. So more on the next part is flexibility. So as far as the first bullet goes, right now, a credit for existing use is a use that is for a building that's on the property or a building that's been on the property and demolished within 1 year. If it's been 2 years, in the current code, if it's been 2 years, there's no credit associated for whatever use was that building. We're proposing in the code to expand that to be 5 years. It gives more flexibility, more time to demolish a structure, get the site designed, get it permitted, and get it built, rather than keeping a structure that now is abandoned around for 4 years to keep that credit. It allows the flexibility of removing the building and moving forward. The other portion of this is relevant to those businesses that aren't on the fee schedule, or maybe it's a different version of what's on the fee schedule. It doesn't quite fit the bill of what we have published. In the code currently, this would be an independent fee study. The independent fee study is something that the developer or the applicant would need to go pay an engineer to go do an analysis and go do counts and then pay us to actually review that. What we've heard is that sometimes is problematic, especially for the smaller businesses, because the cost of hiring that engineer and then the cost of paying us to review it can be problematic for some of these small businesses just starting out. So the code that we're proposing adds another option on the way to this trip generation study that might still get here if this second option doesn't work. But the second option would be for the applicant to provide data that we would request regarding their sales, their business, their trips that they see, and their business operations, where we would then derive what those different trip factors are to have a proposed fee for that specific development. If that doesn't result in enough data, or the applicant still feels that a trip generation study is something they want to pursue, then we could consider that as well. But this second option provides a lower cost, more simplified approach. It can go back and forth, and it's not, I don't want it to sound like a negotiation, because it's not. It would be us asking for data and us analyzing data to see if we could come up with a trip profile to anticipate what that development activity's impact would be on the transportation system. Sometimes that means going back and asking for more data so that we can get the number right. So that option is something that you'll see written in the proposed code that we have in the packet. Another portion of the flexibility is deferrals. So deferral of a traffic impact fee payment allows an applicant, instead of paying the impact fee that's due when the building permit is issued, it allows delaying that payment for up to 18 months to when the building is complete and they're ready to take occupancy. This is something that the state law requires us to offer for single-family residential. Our code actually is more flexible than that, in that it offers it for all types of development, whether it's single-family, multifamily, or also commercial land use. Our code does provide for that. One of the challenges that we've heard associated with the deferral program is that often, again, smaller businesses are tenants occupying a space that's owned by someone else. The deferral requires the property owner to sign a lien against their property. In case that the traffic impact fees are not paid, then the city can collect against that lien. So I'll talk in a minute about another alternative in that situation where the deferral is something that can't be pursued because of that tenant relationship, and they can't get the lien and they can't do the deferral process. Another portion of the flexibility is adding and actually clarifying an exemption or exemptions that are listed in the code. The exemption is for minor alterations or minor construction that don't add a new residential unit, they don't add a new commercial unit. You might be adding some square footage, you might be doing some remodeling. Those things would not trigger unless you're adding those new units, except for commercial developments. Commercial developments, right now, if you're adding square footage, it would be triggering. What we're proposing is that you don't actually trigger for a commercial development until you're up to that 1,000 square feet or 10% of the existing space, whatever's greater. That's when you start being triggering the assessment of a potential traffic impact fee. So payment plans, this was a specific question that came up, and this is again part of the flexibility that we were looking at. So as an alternative to the deferral process, we have written into the proposed code the payment program or payment plan option. And in the code, there are conditions that point to the fee schedule, conditions regarding what types of land use would be eligible for a payment program, what the interest rate would be, what the term would be, what the maximum amount would be. All these conditions are very important to manage some of the risks that are associated with the payment program. A key thing to remember here is when we do allow traffic impact fee to be paid over time, if it's not paid, we still have to build those improvements. The city still has to maintain concurrency per the Growth Management Act, and we then, if there was a non-payment situation, we would have to find the funds and build those improvements to mitigate the impacts of the development that we permitted. So there's risk associated with this, and that's why we're proposing that while the code does allow the payment program, which it doesn't allow today, the actual specifics of what those conditions would be in the fee schedule, so that each year it can be revisited. We can talk about the risks, we can talk about the issues we've seen, and make adjustments as necessary. So in the 2026 fee schedule, what we're proposing in discussions with legal and with finance as far as some of that risk mitigation is to start with an interest rate being set at the prime rate, which is currently 7.5%, maximum term of 24 months, which doesn't seem like a long period of time, but it's longer than the 18-month deferral that a lot of businesses will take advantage of if they own the property or can get a lien against the property. We can't go, well, We are proposing not to go longer than that. The longer that you go, introduce more risks. Also, we are on a timeline to spend the traffic impact fees. We have to spend the fees within 10 years when we collect them. So if you start having longer collection periods, we start getting a really complicated approach towards spending part of what we've collected, but maybe not all of what we've collected, and trying to manage that could become problematic to make sure we comply with that 10-year rule. And then finally, a maximum amount of $15,000. That $15,000 is reflective of some of the fees that we've seen due for some of the smaller businesses, especially when you take into account some of the credits that might be out there. If a fee came in at $17,000 or $20,000, part of it could be paid, and this could be the remaining amount due that then would be financed with the payment plan. And the other part of that too was just the uses that'd be applicable to. Right now, what we're proposing in the fee schedule would be applicable to the commercial uses, the service uses, but not necessarily the residential uses. We haven't heard the concerns about the payment program for the residential development. And so we don't have that indicated in the fee schedule, or industrial for that matter. Okay, so that's a lot. And you've seen a lot of like reducing, collecting less, and that leads to the natural question is, will the TIF funding be enough? Because time out, are we gonna collect enough money to build what we need to build? So first and foremost, building on what James was talking about, traffic impact fees have never been intended, and state law doesn't allow it, the traffic impact fees, to fully fund our transportation system expansion needs. Most of the growth trips that we see, most of the need for capacity on our systems is coming from outside the city, 60%. And so we can't collect on those. So that's a big portion of it that we have to find in other places. We also, we can't collect traffic impact fees from development that's already happened. And we didn't start collecting impact fees until 2001. And even at that, we haven't historically collected the full amount that we need to keep up with the growth that we've had. So no, we already are not collecting or won't collect what we need. But as we went through the exercise of looking at the project costs, we programmed those per trip fees at the maximum we could to pay for those, to get the maximum percentage that we could pay for those projects. So it's not like we could program those per trip fees any higher. We're restricted by the state law. And then in doing so, we also are, go ahead, next slide. We also recognize that even if we could program the impact fees higher, we're trying to maintain that balance. If the fees go too high, if we said, hey, great, let's fund the entire transportation system with traffic impact fees, well, the growth and development would slow down because the fees would be excessive. And so we're looking for this balanced approach. So expanding more on whether or not the traffic impact fees will provide enough funding. So the traffic impact fee programmed amount is $4 million per year, a total of almost $81 million. Another piece of this is that historically we haven't collected $4 million a year. In fact, historically, this programmed amount, we're pretty on target of usually collecting about half of that amount. So our projections for growth and our projections for what we collect, it usually comes in about half of that. So you take on the portions of you add that to the portions that we already can't collect. So you add another roughly $40 million or $2 million a year to the $6 million per year that we can't program into our TIF fees. So we could be up to $8 million per year that we need to find to help fund the transportation system. Where do we find that money? James mentioned a few of these. Grant programs, bonding, low interest loans. The Public Works Trust Fund loan is an example of one that's been helpful in funding some of our larger system improvements that we need to pay over time because we don't have those one-time big traffic impact fee collections and payments. Developer contributions, this could be through the example I cited with those credits of a developer building a project, could be through developer agreements. The transportation benefit districts, so the TBD as we call it, that's in place today. Right now, the focus on the revenues collected by the transportation benefit district is on preservation. It's on keeping our pavement where it needs to be. In the future, that could be expanded. You could look at funding capacity projects, multimodal projects to help fill this gap if we needed it. Revising standards. So another approach is if we get to a point where, hey, we aren't collecting enough funding, but we're having the growth, might get the situation where we look at specific intersections where we can't build a project and propose a lower level service standards. That's probably of all these the scariest one, or the one that is the least recommended, because you lower the standards for that peak commute time. That means more traffic, more congestion, more safety issues. So it's not something that we would like to see happen. We would rather fill these gaps. And then the last two bullet items are extremely important, especially in the world of looking at multimodal transportation. It's about mode shift. It's about reducing the number of trips on the transportation system, not just building our way out of it and building more vehicle capacity. It's how can we get people on buses? How can we get people on bikes? How can we get people walking? We can advocate for more transit. We partner with our transit agencies. We work with them to try to get the best transit services that we can have here in Auburn, and always advocate for more and more transit. Everyone in this room can do that. And we certainly do as much as we can. And hopefully we can do more. And then also focusing on active transportation. So building out very strategically where we put trails, where we put bike lanes, where we put sidewalks, not just because we want to put them everywhere, but focusing on the areas that will actually promote that mode shift. You know, if we have the I-Line station here on Auburn Way North, and we have residential development on I Street, and there's no sidewalks in between, there's no bike lanes in between, it's gonna reduce the likelihood that you're gonna get people actually walking over to use the I-Line or biking to use the I-Line. So we'd be looking at putting in those facilities to make that connection. So these are the things that will help fill that gap, to help get us closer to building out this system to meet these needs of the growth. So with all these changes, the first step is to codify it. Ordinance 6992, there is, it would be modifying Auburn City Code Chapter 19.04. It's in your packet. There's a red line version that shows the changes that we're proposing to reflect what we're talking about tonight, as well as the clean version, because there's a lot of changes, a lot of cleaning up. I think specifically some of these points that I wanted to talk about, most of these we talked about, but the code actually does require a change to make multimodal projects eligible for traffic impact fees, so that we can pay for those projects that help promote the mode shift, as well as incorporating in mode shift type features into the vehicle projects that are on the list as well. Also providing some flexibility for those land uses that are not in the fee schedule. In the code, we're proposing to add that section about providing data, providing some sort of form of analysis rather than the trip generation study, which can be costly and time consuming for the applicants. And then the appeals process. Right now, the traffic impact fees are ultimately assessed by the director, and then the appeal will go straight to the hearing examiner. The hearing examiner process can be time consuming, can be costly to the applicant. The applicant pays for the hearing examiner process. What we've seen success in some other code sections and where we're making determinations is to have another layer. So what we're proposing in the code is that the traffic impact fees would originally be assessed by the city engineer, by me, and the first level of appeal would then go to the director, so it's heard by the director, we collect more data if we need to, and then if the appeal continues after that, it can go to the hearing examiner. So it gives one more layer, so it's just not automatically charging the applicant and taking more time to have the impact fees revisited if they think we missed something with the first assessment. So next steps. Next week, the ordinance being brought to City Council for consideration for adoption, and it has the terms in here that we've discussed tonight. And then October would be the full city fee schedule coming for discussion and for adoption. And the fee schedule would include the traffic impact fees with the revisions that we've proposed and talked about tonight.
So with that, that was a lot. A lot of technical information, so if there are any questions that we need to answer.
Deputy Mayor Rakes.
First of all, I want to say thank you. You guys must be dreaming about this at night. With a lot of information. You touched on something at the beginning, and maybe I missed it because there was so much information, but you said not every business is listed in a category. So then how, you were gonna explain how we were gonna do that?
Yeah.
Okay, did I miss it?
No, I'm happy to
Okay.
to talk about it a little more. I can use a winery as an example. So I wanna open up a winery in downtown and I look in the fee schedule, I wanna know what all my fees are gonna be, I turn to the traffic impact fee section, I don't see it listed, but get the option that says it's not listed. And that will lead me to a set of instructions that says, okay, if your business is not listed here, then you have two options. You can provide trip data to the city to help the city evaluate what the fee would be, or you can hire an engineer to do the independent fee study, which involves paying the engineer and then paying us to review it. The second option I said is what we're proposing to add. That would include a phone number or instructions to call and reach out to talk through what the business is, and we'd ask questions and we'd ask them to submit a data package of information that we could then use to develop what the impact fee would be.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work.
Council, any questions? Councilmember Baldwin.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. This is exactly the type of thoughtful, intentional approach to, essentially kind of taking TIF, throwing it in the air, finding the best parts, and what we can do or change or modify to really meet the needs that we're hearing, across the community. And so, it's your effort shows, and I appreciate it. I think perhaps the only question I have, because I'm very excited by what's been presented tonight, is have we, in the process of coming up with this proposal, have we met with any of our stakeholders in the community, like the Chamber or Green River Small Business Development Center, or any of the other groups that could maybe weigh in on the recommendations? I think if nothing else, they'd be very excited as well. I just didn't know if they had had a chance to have input in the process.
Sure. So no, we have not met with those different groups. One of the things that we find when you're talking about fees related to development is most of the stakeholder group is going to come back and tell you they don't want to pay any fees. So we know that. So what we needed to do is we needed to look at the data, and that's what you heard tonight from the staff. So we needed to look at the data. We needed to figure out what is the appropriate way to facilitate that data and to facilitate how we do those calculations, what those factors are that make sense. There really isn't a way to modify some of those factors to make it make more sense. We could either choose to do those factors or not do those factors. If we don't do those factors, what you're going to see in some of those land uses that we want to promote in our comprehensive plan and in our land use zoning is you're going to see those costs go up if we remove those factors. So we haven't asked that question very specifically because introducing those comments in there isn't necessarily going to be able to be something that we can change in the calculations because it is very much data driven.
Okay. No, I appreciate that.
I'll get right back to you. My question has to do with, it's kind of piggybacking off of what Councilmember Baldwin had asked. The credit tool that you guys proposed tonight, is this something that our economic community development can go out into the community, work with the chamber, work with the DAC, work with the BIA, and say, hey, listen, we have these tools, help educate them so when they are trying to pull in business into our downtown, they're armed with that information?
Yes, and that is part of why we are having those conversations with our economic development folks, is so that we can have that communication tool and enforcement going out there with that business community of how do you figure out what your TIF is, and making sure that that tool will work for what their needs are.
Fantastic, thank you. Councilmember Baldwin.
Yeah, I've got a couple, So one of the things I was going to ask about is for the level of service area 1 in the mapping, what's our intended frequency for reviewing that map or updating it? Because that would very much impact, future businesses.
Okay.
So the level transit service 1 was established in the comprehensive plan. And so it's intentional that we have an actual established area because it's going to be the basis of fee. As we get improved transit services that would modify the level transit service area, our intention would be to update the plan, to amend the comprehensive plan to change that area. If that becomes, hey, best case scenario, we're getting new transit all the time, and that might be problematic to update the comprehensive plan all the time. If that was the case, then we'd make some adjustmts, but we wanted a mechanism to solidify it. And then if it expands or when it expands, then we'll amend the plan. Because if it's transit service that expands enough, really, some of the modeling we do might need to be redone anyways to see what some of those impacts may or may not be.
So I guess I would want to add to that. So for all of the fees, our intent would not be to go in and update the comprehensive plan list on an annual basis any longer. It would be looking at that 5-year review period or that 10-year cycle for that comp plan, and then we'd be coming back to the year after that comp plan change is done with how does that affect the fee schedule? What changes in that fee schedule? And in the in-between times, doing that construction cost index for that fee increase to make sure that we're staying consistent with where the inflation on construction cost is going.
Councilmember Trout.
I didn't see on the map warehousing. Where does that business comes into this area?
Are you talking about in the map? So there's a separate line. We just didn't have it in the sample sheet. So if you recall from the fee schedule is about 4 pages long of fees in there for the different types of land uses. Warehousing is one of those. So it has its own separate list in there, similar to the industrial one that was shown in the examples.
Councilmember Trout.
So if someone was thinking of coming in from out of state, needing a 630,000 square foot, could we accommodate them?
So as far as where they could go in the city, I don't know that I could tell you where that could happen in the city. But as far as being able to tell them what their TIF fee is for a location they may be considering, yes, they would be able to figure that out from this because, again, warehousing is a specific item in the list. We just didn't include it in the sample list that we gave you in the presentation.
I think another part of that is a lot of those bigger projects go through a pre-application meeting process.
Yes.
And part of the information that we provide to all of those applicants as part of that is an estimate of their traffic impact fee based on the type of business that they're proposing and the square footage. And our best estimate of what a credit may be for the previous uses. So for anything that goes through that pre-application process, they have an idea of part of the business decision to move forwards, they have an idea of what that traffic impact fee is going to be.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yeah. So I was gonna say with the presentation and what's been put in front of us, I was excited to see the competitiveness that we'll have for businesses that are looking to get started in our community versus our neighboring cities. So I feel like if ever there was a time to jumpstart economic development, this is, certainly creating that opportunity here in Auburn to give businesses coming in a chance to get a foothold and get started. I think that this model, the new modeling that's been presented, is going to give us a lot of opportunity in seeing growth of small businesses and seeing new jobs coming in with those businesses, as well as being able to support additional infill housing and our transit centers, all big goals that we've had. So I think this alignment to those strategic goals is really well done. So,
Council, any more questions? Councilmember Sturgis.
Thank you. First, you were right, second meeting in a row, to please hold all of our questions because you would answer all of them. So for me personally, you've done that twice in a row now. So thank you guys very much. I write down a question, I'm like, oh, they just answered it. Yes. But on a question about first off, thank you. This is fantastic. The proposed changes are wonderful. I've done a ton of research on getting up to speed to understand our traffic impact fees over the last 2 months, and the way that you have laid it out just is very, very thoughtful and aligned with how successful cities should be looking at it, so thank you. But question for you on the loan process. So if a business is able to request deferral for up to 18 months, or they could do the payment plan for 24 months, how come I would want to pay 7.5% interest for 24 months of a payment plan if I could defer it for 18 months, and then I would only have 6 more months left or what have you.
So one of the things to remember for the deferral plan, you pay the fee that's in effect at the time that you make the payment.
Okay.
So 18 months out, right now could mean that those fees might increase.
Okay.
So they might be paying an increase already on that fee if they wait till that end time. The other side of it too is what we're seeing is you have tenants who don't own the building and the property owner doesn't want to allow the lien on the property. And state law requires that lien as part of that process for the deferrals. So we don't have the ability to waive that requirement in that deferral process, which is why we talk through the payment plan process with our legal folks and our finance folks to figure out is there a happy medium somewhere in there where we can help out those smaller businesses, those smaller impacts, and not take on a significant amount of risk for the city.
Okay, awesome. And then you mentioned earlier partnering, sorry, Councilmember Sturgis. Thank you, sorry. You mentioned earlier partnering with economic development. I've heard just recently in the last 2 weeks, 2 examples of where, so question if we had a 600,000 square foot warehouse coming in, having that business owner meet with our economic development team, and then they can then be kind of that help and that strategic partner to approach what's the best way to go about this. And there's some instances where, depending on the type of business, that there's even a way for a business to apply to, have an exemption or what have you, if it meets the requirements. But the economic development team would be, the go-to to be able to help them work through that process the best way.
So they would certainly be a contact for them to start that. If a business is asking more about the specific exemptions in the code, then we would want to have our staff involved in that conversation as well to make sure that the interpretations are happening correctly in that exemption. Because there are very limited exemptions in the code right now and under state law for what we can do in that process. But we certainly would want to be part of that conversation. And also, as James mentioned, we have that pre-application process for any significant development coming in. They can come in, they can talk to us about all of the requirements related to development. So not just hear about the traffic impact fees, but they may also hear about what are the likely fire fees that would come in with the fire impact fees. What are some of the permit fees? What are some of the permit difficulties for that particular project? What might be environmental triggers that might come in. So it gives them a chance to get a good feel for, is this really a feasible project, or are there some issues here that we would need to see if we can overcome in order to make it work at this location? Or is there a better location we need to go look at?
Councilmember Trout.
I apologize. I should have said thank you to begin with, because you did an amazing job presenting all this information. And as Councilwoman Sturgeon said, you answered all our questions that we asked back in the last meeting. So thank you very much for bringing us all that information and making it very clear and easy to understand. So thank you.
Council members, any more questions? Councilmember Ammer.
I'm gonna say a comment, and I hope the people who listen to us, they should come to Auburn. Our fee less than Sumner, like really Sumner, almost 250, sorry, 280. That's my comment, but thank you. It's amazing, good presentation. Thank you for all the hard work.
Thank you.
We appreciate everything you do, guys.
I will say that our economic and community development team worked very, very hard in this city to try to bring in business. They are hitting the pavement hard, and this, with some new tools, is going to make it even better. Kudos to James, Jacob, and Ingrid. Thank you so much for all of your hard work. I know how hard it is to put something like this together, so appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, with that, moving on to ordinance number 6985.
I have Daniel Galk, Park Planning and Development Manager, who will talk about park impact fees.
You, Director Kruger.
Late, like falling asleep back there. All right, so. Mine is a little bit shorter and less technical than James and Jacob's. So Daniel Galk, Parks Planning and Development Manager. So what we have before council tonight is basically a follow-up on the impact fees study that or impact fee update that we did back in June. And so this is essentially it's a code cleanup. The last time this code was updated is 2011, I think is what it was, 2017 maybe. So just based on all the changes that community development did with the middle housing and changing of definitions and everything. So and then along with James and Jacobs impact fees, I tried to make them more consistent between the two of them. Obviously, there's a lot more to their, to the transportation impact fees than the park impact fee code. So all of it wasn't included in there, but so as I mentioned, the state required updates like of the definitions that are in the zoning code. So making those consistent along as some other just code changes that didn't really apply anymore. Like in the definitions, there's a downtown catalyst park service area, which that might have been in a previous fee schedule, but it's not mentioned anywhere else in the code or in the fee schedule. So like for instance, that's proposed to be removed. See, so there's kind of some of the background there. And then, as you know, the council updated the impact fees for square footage for residential units. And so that, minor code change, text changes in here. That's probably the most substantive change in there. Like I mentioned, a lot of it's just kind of, there was a lot of redundant verbiage, and so trying to clean that up to make it easier to read. So like Jacob mentioned, there's a strikeout underlying version in here, and then also a clean copy of the code. 'Cause there was some numbering and stuff that needed to get fixed, so just for council to be able to make sense of it, that was included. And like I mentioned, it's essentially housekeeping and then making the parks impact fee code consistent with the transportation, so people aren't seeing two different types of verbiage used in two, code sections, adjacent code sections, I guess you could call them. And that's really about all the, kind of the gist of what the changes are. And if there's any questions from council, I'd be happy to respond.
Council, any questions for our guest? You're off the hook.
So then August 4th it'll be on for consent, so.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
With that is the last of the Public Works and Community Development discussion items. I will hand it back over to Deputy Mayor Riggs.
Thank you, Councilmember Tracy Taylor. I am going to hand this over to Director Thomas.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor, Mayor, and Council. I'm here to go over our second budget amendment of the 25-26 biennial budget. This is significantly smaller of a budget amendment. It typically is following our first budget amendment of the year, which includes most of our carry forward requests and our fund balance true-ups. This is more of the housekeeping things that have happened since the original adoption of the 25-26 budget. So there's three major types of things that we're going to see in this budget amendment request, which is new programs that have offsetting revenue, so a lot of grant revenue, and then a couple of new programs, and then capital project adjustments, which really are those the offsetting revenues, but related to capital. I'm going to start with our general fund first in the summary of changes. We have one carry forward item for $15,000 that didn't get captured in that first budget amendment of the year. We have 6 items with programs that have offsetting revenue associated with them, and then we have 2 new programs that total $98,000. One includes one FTE, and another one, there's actually a limited term employee also included that's part of the grant funding that we're asking to adopt. So the details in the general fund, the new revenue we're just asking for the expenditure authority to accomplish the goals and the requirements of the actual funding sources. So we've got 4 grants in there. We have for grants, increased fees, which is on the recreation funding. That's to help absorb the cost of professional services, temporary employees throughout the summer to continue staffing our programs at an adequate level. That's offset with some increased fees for facility rentals out at the parks. And then the signal repair consulting, it's not a grant, that is it's the cost to repair signals, but the offsetting revenue is the insurance recovery claims associated with those damage to signals. Moving down to the new programs. One is for a temporary employee, so this isn't an FTE or an LTE, this is just a temporary employee paid for out of, it doesn't give us an authority to hire a full-time employee, but it's to help the communications department with the extra workload that they've taken on over the last year. Kind of a couple of ways. One, with the enhanced social media campaigns that the city has really been focusing on coming to visit Auburn, and all of the things that Auburn has to offer, as well as actually increased work order requests. So the communications department is actually an internal service fund department, so they help serve all of the departments throughout the city. But somebody has to pay for it, so that it's coming from the general fund. So we'll see it again on the actual communication on the next slide that shows the communications department as an offsetting revenue dollar impact in that fund, but it's the general fund that is will be paying for it. And this is for a temporary employee for the second half of 2025. We also are requesting an FTE for the Court and Probation Services Administrator. So assuming a hire date of September 1st, that is the $85,900. And then we're also, because we're that impact does follow into 2026 as well, the estimated fully loaded salaries and benefits for 2026 would be $258,000 for 2026. And then there's one more thing, and that is that one carry forward item that I had mentioned had gotten missed, and that's the SHAPE professional services. The city commits a portion of our housing, a portion of the sales tax that we receive from the state. We commit $15,000 a year to the capital fund for SHAPE. We did not receive our bill for 2024 until May, and so that was just an oversight in getting that money carried forward. We do have the bill to pay for both our 2024 and our 2025 capital commitments to that program. So we just need to get that budget authority in 2025 to pay it. All other funds, we have a total of 9 requests. Some of them are kind of doubled up from the general fund. We have a couple of capital carry forward items that have revenue associated with them. We have 3 new programs with new revenue, and then we have 1 new program. So the first 6 items there are those capital carry forward items I talked about. It's all offsetting revenue. It's revenue that we had originally budgeted in 2024. We have not yet received it. We still anticipate to receive it. So we're carrying forward that revenue and the associated expenditures with that revenue. We're carrying that forward into 2025. We have 3 new programs. One is the LTAC grant that was approved by the LTAC board. There's 2 grants with that. One is the $100,000 for the Pacific Raceways. That's for a year of sponsorships, plus $15,000 to the T-Rex World Championships at Emerald Downs. I do not have the details, but it sounds exciting. And then the other 2 new programs are those programs that I already mentioned. They are being budgeted for in the general fund. The general fund is paying for them. So you can see that the net impact in the IT and communications fund is 0. And then we have a couple of new revenue programs, and these are related to both grants and agreements that we have with outside agencies to help with the funding of some of our capital projects. I told you it was much quicker and condensed compared to the first one.
Okay, council, any questions? Councilmember Baldwin.
Yeah, for the new position for the Court and Probation Services Admin, is that the administrator?
Yes, correct.
And you said the total cost for that position for a full year in 2026 would be $258,000?
Yeah, that is the amount that we are, let me double check. Yes, 258,000 is what we have in the 2026, what we're asking for 2026.
Okay, so the 85 is because we're in a short year, is that?
85 is assuming a September 1 hire date.
Any other questions? Councilmember Tracy Taylor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ricks. I just more so along the lines of a comment. I am really happy to see a part-time comms position in here, just because the social media presence that they're doing right now has just exponentially grown. So it's great to see some support for Jonathan and the team. I think the more support we can put towards them, the bigger presence Auburn has in our social media world. So thank you.
Any other questions, Council? Councilmember Baldwin.
Follow-up question for the Court and Probation Services admin. Is that going to be considered part of CapEx for startup costs, or looking at that as far as ongoing OpEx? So the original estimates we had for annual operating were in the 3.5 million. So is the 258,000 for 2026 a first step coming out of that anticipated?
Salaries and wages are operating expenses. So yeah, all the salaries associated with the municipal court are included in that operating expense figure.
Okay.
Councilmember Baldwin.
That's what I anticipated, so thank you for confirming. And then are we planning to track the startup costs that we're paying as we are preparing for that?
Yes, I mean, all of our, it's not gonna necessarily be tracked like a capital project necessarily, but it'll have its own dedicated accounting numbers in our general fund, so we'll easily be able to track the individual expenses. And it's gonna be limited to whatever the budget is that's adopted by the council, so for that.
Any other questions, Council? Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Council, we came to the end of our agenda, so we are adjourned.